Thank you very much, Honorable Peter Pittenger. Honorable Emilio Tanwatco III, Vice Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Good afternoon. Partners in governance, Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the National Security Advisor, Secretary Eduardo M. Año, let me present to you the state of play in the South China Sea as far as national security is concerned. First, the geopolitical tension in South China Sea. The SCS continues to be at a flashpoint for geopolitical tensions due to the overlapping territorial claims by China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. The SCS is a vital hub for global trade, energy resources, and strategic control, drawing the attention of external powers like the United States, which conducts freedom of navigation operations. Since 2009, China has been increasing their efforts to consolidate its position in the South China Sea through its expansive claim using their military, Coast Guard, and maritime militia to harass foreign vessels exploring and extracting resources in the SCS. Now in the Philippines position. On 12 January 2013, the Republic of the Philippines instituted arbitral proceedings against the People's Republic of China under Annex 7 to the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. On 12 July 2016, the arbitral tribunal tasked to adjudicate the case ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, determining the major elements of the Chinese claims, including the 9-line reclamation activities and other activities were illegal and unlawful. Since 2012, the UNCLOS and the arbitral award have been the twin cornerstones of policies and action of the Philippine government in the WPS and SCS. Despite having won the arbitration, China continues to refuse to recognize and abide by the ruling, undermining the salient international law and the rules-based international order. From gray zone to ICAD. The term gray zones describe a set of activities that occur between peace and war and often entail calibrated exercise that does not necessarily breach escalating thresholds while achieving certain coercive effects because of its very nature. The Philippines has had difficulty responding, countering gray zone activities. Hence, the Philippines decided to rename the gray zone activities to what they really are, which is ICAD, meaning illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive action in the area. Despite all this in place for international order, China is still conducting ICAD activities in the area, designed to sway but not really overthrow existing international order. China's ICAD activities allow Beijing to bypass international law and consequently undermine the rules-based international order. As shown, here are some of the examples of Chinese Coast Guard ships firing water cannon at the Philippine Coast Guard and BFAR vessels. Specifically on the right, Beijing deployment of long-range acoustic device is among its gray zone tactics in the SCS, which happened on 04 December 2024. Last November 29, the Philippine Navy confirmed that dozens of Chinese military, Coast Guard, and maritime militia vessels continue to swarm and stay in Subi Reef near Pag-asa Island in the West Philippine Sea. The Subi Reef is occupied by China and has turned the same into a fully operational naval base through reclamation and provisions of satellite communication equipment, and other military wherewithal. The Chinese Coast Guard's coercive, aggressive, and barbaric actions during the humanitarian rotation and resupply mission at BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal on June 17, 2024, resulted in severe damage to personnel and vessels of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, including their communication and navigation equipment. At the left part, in early October 2024, Chinese Coast Guard vessels tailed and harassed Filipino fishermen trying to fish in the waters near Sabina Shoal or Escoda. At the right part, in late November 2024, the Chinese People's Liberation Army helicopter harassed Filipino fishermen in Rosul or Herico Rift in the West Philippine Sea. The Chinese Coast Guard seems to never run out of ICAD activities in the WPS, such as issuing radio challenges and unauthorized marine scientific research, among others. In February 2023, they also aimed a military-grade laser at the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, temporarily blinding its crew and posing a serious threat to navigational safety. Additionally, the Chinese military and Coast Guard have launched dangerous flares at Philippine aircraft and vessels operating within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, further escalating tension and demonstrating aggressive intimidation tactics. In 2022, U.S. Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral John C. Aquilino reported that China has militarized at least 3 artificial islands it built in South China Sea. China reclaimed a total of close to 3,000 acres on 7 coral reefs it occupied in the Spratlys Islands in the southern part of China. China's island building activities have negatively impacted fisheries in the immediate area on the reclamation sites, and as the 2016 award also affirmed, have caused the destruction of the coral and marine ecosystem in the South China Sea. Another example of ICAD activity, a Chinese Coast Guard ship that blocked the Philippine Coast Guard vessel during a resupply mission in BRP Sierra Madre in Second Thomas Shoal. The picture on the right shows President Marcos Jr. shaking hands and recognizing the bravery of a soldier named Seaman First Class Jeffrey Pacundo, who lost his right thumb during a maritime clash with Chinese Coast Guard near Ayungin Shoal last June 17, 2024. Part of the ICAD activities and one of the biggest issues that the Philippines government is facing is Chinese cyber operations and misinformation, disinformation campaigns relative to the South China Sea territorial claims. Just recently, a Chinese national and 2 accomplices were arrested for allegedly conducting espionage activities. According to the National Bureau of Investigation Cybercrime Division, the suspects were scanning critical infrastructure that could threaten national security. It was also reported the Chinese national is a graduate controlled and operated by the People's Liberation Army. According to Assistant General Jonathan Malaya in a recent forum, there will be more arrests in the next few days in coordination with the AFP and the NBI. Now, let me share with you the efforts of the Philippine government addressed to the security concerns in the WPS and SCS in terms of its strengthening the organization, diplomatic, political, military, information campaigns, and legislative measures. Last year, the President signed Executive Order Number 57, which renamed and reorganized the National Coast Watch Council to the National Maritime Council to formulate policies and strategies to ensure a unified, coordinated, and effective governance framework for the country's maritime security and domain awareness, among other functions. Under the organizational umbrella of the National Maritime Council is the National Task Force for West Philippine Sea, chaired by the National Security Advisor. The mandate of the National Task Force for West Philippine Sea is to orchestrate, synchronize, and to operationalize the employment of capabilities of different agencies for a unified action relative to the WPS. On the strategic front, and as earlier stated, the UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award are the twin anchors of the Philippine policy and action at the SCS and WPS. The Philippines is likewise undertaking an aggressive stand for international support, not only by pursuing closer ties with allies and strategic partners, but also to a broader recalibration of its foreign policy. As an example, the Philippines, the United States, and Japan vowed to continue working together to enhance and deepen trilateral ties, particularly in the areas of economic, maritime, and technology cooperation. Further, the Philippine government advances diplomatic tools for a peace settlement of disputes, such as keeping communication lines open with China, filing diplomatic protest, issuance of note verbals and demarches, among others. As shown, growing number of countries have issued statements of support to the Philippines following the 2016 arbitral ruling and in line with the UNCLOS. Lastly, the Philippines successfully completed the 5th rotation and reprovision RORE mission in BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal, in line with the Philippine-China understanding to prevent miscalculation in the area. The AFP viewed the mission as substantial demonstration in diplomatic and pragmatic cooperation in dealing with the issues in the SCS. Beyond the diplomatic response, the AFP and participating forces from other countries held casualty response simulation and heavy weapons training, conducting its 8th iteration, Kamandag 2024, integrated emerging doctrines for coastal defense and counter-landing operations, and other meal-to-meal activities, including unilateral training and the Balikatan exercise. One of the priorities of the government is transparency initiative, to publicize the aggressive action of China and get the support of the Filipinos and the international community. Just recently, the Philippine Coast Guard launched a comic book to raise awareness, especially in the rural areas, titled The Stories of Teacher June. Also, aside from WPS Provincial Caravan, the National Security Council, together with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, held Fisher Folks Congress in local community to discuss sustainable fishing practices and strengthen partnership for peace and security in the WPS. On 08 November 2024, the President signed into law 2 measures to reinforce the Philippines' entitlement and responsibility within the maritime zone. The Philippine Maritime Zones Act declares the Philippine Maritime Zones in accordance with the standards set by the UNCLOS, which provide a clear and robust legal framework to protect and manage marine resources and entitlements, ensuring their sustainable use for the benefit of the Filipino people. The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act establishes a system of archipelagic sea lanes and air routes through which foreign vessels and aircraft shall exercise archipelagic sea lanes passage. The designated ASL routes aim to facilitate safe passage for foreign ships and aircraft without compromising national security nor diminishing Philippine capacity to regulate such passage and exercise good environmental stewardship. During the New Year's call of the National Security Council last month, the National Security Advisor, Secretary Eduardo M. Año, called the year 2024 as the year of policy milestone, citing the National Security Policy 2023 to 2028 and the National Security Strategy 2024, both approved by the President, particularly to address issues in the WPS and SCS. The NSP identifies the national sovereignty and territorial integrity as one of the national security interests, subsequently making defense, military, maritime, air, land, space, and border security part of its 15-point national agenda. Moreover, the national security strategy is seen to enhance the country's ability to tackle complex security challenges both locally and globally, and is aligned with the provisions of the national security policy, which prioritizes 4 key areas. 1. Human capital development. 2. Institution building. 3. Efficient use of national power through diplomacy and defense. And 4. Fostering sustainable economic growth through resilience and legislative support. Finally, as a beloved citizen of the Republic of the Philippines, I believe that there is one thing that came out positively amidst the adversity in the WPS. It is a collective aspiration, patriotism, and unity of the Filipinos in protecting the national sovereignty and territorial integrity against any foreign power. This challenging time has made Filipinos resilient, resourceful, and stronger as a nation. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.